this unique example of smell of garbage to talk about compounds because, after all, they were also compounds. All right, let's discuss what is a compound is. A compound is a substance composed of at least two or more elements combined together in a specific ratio. Basically, there were whole number of ratio. You only have whole atoms, and they can be attracted together in the form of ionic bond, or they make a bond by sharing electrons, which we call them as covalent bonds. Compounds can be ionic or covalent. All you need to look to qualify for a compound is either you have at least two or more of them clubbed together. So by any means of attractions of ions or by sharing electrons between them. So any one of them would qualify as a compounds. So, well, we are going to spend at least half the chapter on compounds. So by the end of, at least half of the chapter, you would have a good grasp on what is a compound is. We're just introducing it, right? So, familiar examples the book discusses is, water. Water is a compound. It contains two hydrogens and one oxygen. So it is a compound. However, these bonds in water, oxygen, and hydrogen is made up of covalent bond. And another compound example that we discuss here is sodium chloride, the salt. Salt is made up of a sodium ion attracted to chloride ion. They both are attracted together, so they stay next to each other. That we call it as ionic compound. So be it a covalent or ionic, they were just compounds. And what we have here is, I just want to use an unique example to show that, everything that we come across in nature is a compound. That's why I use this unique example of, smell of garbage. We all know that garbage smells, and it's not a pleasant smell, right? It's not like you're walking next to a flower garden that, you enjoy the smell. You dispose that smell. You try to, avoid that smell because we don't like the smell of those molecules that were generated from the garbage bin. What are those molecules? What are those compounds? Here are some of the examples of those compounds. They smell pungent because, some of them are made up of sulfur. Sulfur-made compounds in general are pungent. So those are, hydrogen sulfide, dimethyl sulfide, or methane thiol. If you don't know, or if you you're not supposed to know how to name these compounds. One thing that we are going to do in the chapter is how to name some of these compounds in an easier way. You're not going to learn all these names today. You're going to learn the most basic ones, the predictable ones. And other compounds are, petrosine, or cadaverine, or thyme blue, or acetic acid, acetyl hair ammonia. All of these were, generated in the garbage bin when, these random food samples or, whatever the trash, the plastic, everything is combined. They get rotten and they eventually generate these smelly compounds. That's why garbage has this unique smell, because these are the most common molecules when garbage bin is full of garbage. Okay, now you know what our compounds are. I'm going to see you in part 2 of the lecture.